Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Or, of course, if you are watching on our growing YouTube channel, that is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me for today's podcast, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones, and our director of football recruiting, Miss Dina King. And guys, we're here for a football Q&A podcast. We posted something on our premium message boards a couple of days ago, kind of allowing some of our subscribers to get in there and post some questions that they wanted us to talk about on the podcast. So we're here to do that. But before we dive into the meat of this podcast, I want to go ahead and blast Rogue Apothecary. They are sponsoring this podcast. They specialize in top shelf family-grown hemp products, CBD, Delta-8, tinctures, oils, gummies, whatever you're looking for in that kind of CBD Delta-8 realm. Rogue Apothecary's got you covered. They actually have a farm out in Oregon where they grow all their stuff as well. So really high-quality products. I know AJ's used some of the CBD stuff in the past as well. He can vouch for it. You've been pretty pleased with it, haven't you, AJ?
Yeah, it came through for me in Las Vegas because I didn't sleep a couple of nights last week. It's been, how this time of year is, and I didn't sleep the night before my flight. So I at least had a direct to Vegas, but nice. My brother happened to be there in Vegas. He's a Carolina fan. He bought a ticket, and so I had to go spend some time with him, and then went back to the hotel room and a little CBD oil, and AJ was out like a light.
Yeah. Out cold, man.
I was refreshed and ready to rock for the game the next day. And there was a lot to report about because it was such an ugly performance by the Tar Heels. But I have definitely used the product quite a bit here in the last 5 weeks or so. And my terrible sleeping conditions have improved. They're still not great because sometimes I don't take it. Sometimes I forget. So those are those nights that I'm counting sheep and it doesn't work. So I can't count that high.
Yeah, well, I can imagine some Carolina basketball fans after that Kentucky performance could have used some of these products.
Oh, absolutely.
Probably still.
I think it sponsored our three things that day.
Yeah,
so
we did.
That was pretty timely. That was good timing by Rogue.
Yeah, they looked out for us on that one. So go check out Rogue Apothecary. You can find the link to their website in the description. We have a graphic on screen, so use that promo code as well if you want to save some over there too. So check them out. Really high quality products. But guys, let's dive into the Q&A portion of this podcast. Got some really good questions from our subscribers. So we'll just go. I have them all listed right here. We'll kind of just go through them in order and talk about them. Some are a little bit more for Dina, some are a little bit more for AJ, and some, we can all kind of hit on a little bit. So AJ, I'm going to start out with you on this one with the first question that we got. Asking about some of the opt-outs in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Any significant ones in your mind with kind of what we know so far? I know the game's still, about a week away and whatnot, but what are your thoughts on, a couple of the opt-outs you've seen on that side for the Tar Heels, and are any of them, extremely significant ones you need to watch out for?
Well, the significance of Kyler McMichael opting out is it really thins the cornerback rotation. So with McMichael, you also have Tony Grimes and Storm Duck. And you got three guys that are experienced, are very talented, and have all had very high moments as Tar Heels. Now that it's just Duck and Grimes, because McMichael is preparing for the NFL draft, then your third guy is Obi Igbuna, who's experienced. He's been around, but he's more of a special teams guy. He's gotten some stretches in key games. Probably the longest stretch was a year ago at Florida State. He played quite a bit in the second half in that game, but I think there's a drop-off. There's no disrespect to Obi, but there's a drop-off from Duck and Grimes down. But quite frankly, if Duck and Grimes are healthy, they're going to play every rep. It's not going to be 90 degrees. They're not going to have to be rested and paced because of the heat or anything like that. I don't know how much South Carolina is going to challenge them because they have had quarterback issues. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think as long as Duck and Grimes are healthy, that's really not going to be much of an issue. They don't miss anything with respect to special teams with McMichael not playing. So I don't think that that's going to be much of a problem. I don't expect any more opt-outs a week before the game, especially with Christmas in between. The players practice the 23rd, morning of the 23rd, then they're all going home for a couple of days. I'm not sure if they're meeting in Chapel Hill or meeting in Charlotte, but then they'll have a few days in Charlotte before the bowl game. So unlike a year ago where the opt-outs dramatically changed the Tar Heels, as long as Duck and Grimes stay healthy in this game, I don't think the opt-outs are going to be – I don't think any of that's going to be an issue at all. This is going to be about as full a team as Carolina fans could hope for going into a bowl game, especially after a disappointing season like this.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I'm glad you hit on that. I was just kind of curious if you expected any more. I personally didn't think you would say expect any more this close to game. I know it's still a week away, but this close to game time, you think if anybody was going to opt out, they probably would have done it in the same period that McMichael did.
In conversations that I've had with people in and around the program, and just people who just understand the swift change in direction college athletics has gone the last couple of years and is still going, never say never. Yeah. If I were to say here on a podcast, say nobody's going to opt out, nobody's going to leave in the next week, I'd be a fool, because you just don't know with kids these days, because they're given so much freedom that there's so much freedom and so many kids have taken advantage of it. There's not really an accountability thing anymore for it. I don't think anybody feels guilty about just like getting up and walking away, because we live in a society that in one sense, they're telling us to think about everybody else with respect to the pandemic. And then on the other side, they're saying, just think about yourself when it comes to your profession, which I totally get all that. But I think with the college thing, it's very much you come first. So kids can move at any time. They can go at any time. I don't think they feel guilty. And generally, I think part of the culture that's changed a little bit is that their teammates understand. Mm-hmm. I think if a kid would have opted out 20 years ago, his teammates would have been ticked. But now they're like, hey, man, bro, you got to do what you got to do for you. So I think the culture of the sport can handle it when a kid leaves. I think we all understand. I think the teammates understand. The coaches don't like it, but they understand and they have to adapt. So that's the way things are right now.
Definitely. Yeah, good stuff. Dina, second question. This one's kind of directed towards you, and AJ, feel free to hit on it towards the end as well, because I know you're obviously cover football recruiting too. But Dina, this is a question from one of our subscribers as well. Who has the best chance, in your opinion, of starting as a true freshman next season? Andre Green, Zach Rice, or Travis Shaw? I think all three of those guys, potential there. I mean, they're pretty damn talented.
You said start?
Yeah, that's the question. Who do you think has the best chance of starting?
By the way, I don't know if Dina has seen – I haven't seen the questions.
Me either.
I started the thread, but I've been so swamped I have not seen it. I commented on one of the threads, but I didn't – it was I commented on a comment. So this is raw here for us.
I like that.
Go ahead, Miss King. Miss King has the floor.
I would say Andre Green, because he priority, he comes in at a position of need. Carolina needs that big receiver that can stretch the field and complement the guys like Josh Downs. Just need a big play possibility. That's what Carolina kind of missed this year without Diami and Daz, kids that could pop off a 75-yard touchdown, catch. Mm-hmm. I mean, they did have Josh, but they just need more options. Nothing against Zach or Travis. I think they will get reps, and they are two hard workers. And I would not put it past that they get significant reps. And who knows what happens when they get there. I mean, certainly 5 stars. I mean, Carolina will play who they feel the best. And if those guys come down there and do the work and beat out some of the other guys, I could see all 3 of them possibly, at some time. I'm not saying game 1, snap 1, we're going to see, those guys out there, but they're going to have to get used to the college game. I mean, Zach's going to have to get used to playing guys, his same speed, same height, same weight, same ability, same thing with Travis. So we'll see how that goes.
AJ, you got any thoughts on that?
It's a lot easier for a skill guy to step in and play right away than it is for a guy in the trenches. I don't think the average college football fan, maybe I'm wrong, I don't think they really, especially if they never played the game, I don't think they really understand how hard it is to go from high school to playing a lot at the line of scrimmage. As good as Miles Murphy was, it took him till the Wake Forest game his freshman year to start getting extended snaps, and we're still only talking the 18 to 25 range. Mm-hmm. I can see Travis getting that. A lot of it depends on how much Keyshawn Silver gets in shape and is ready to roll for his second year next season. I think the way that they're building the defensive front, they don't need Travis to step in and play 40 snaps a game, which is good for him because he won't be thrown to the wolves before he's ready. And they won't lose some of that trajectory process. You kind of want to bring these guys in and have them go on a slow trajectory, building toward being ready, that once they finally have that role, they don't lose that role, because then you don't want to deal with confidence stuff later on. And in the trenches, you don't want to deal with injuries. If a guy physically and mentally isn't ready and makes a mistake, that's where you get hurt. And you could sustain serious injuries at the line of scrimmage, especially on the offensive line if you're not hurt. As far as Zach goes, I think it's going to be a lot tougher for him, just because, name me off the top of your head how many true freshmen have started on the offensive line, even at North Carolina, as mediocre as the program has been the last quarter century. Mm-hmm. I can think with James Hurst, I believe, was the only one. Mm-hmm. William Barnes played a lot his first 2 games and then had an injury, and he hasn't recovered. And that was 3.5 years ago. Yeah. So that's how hard it is to do this. As good as Zach is, I would be surprised if he's starting right away. However, of all the true freshman offensive linemen I've seen come into this program, he looks to me like one that, as much as anybody else, would be able to handle a fairly significant role, because he's really smart. He's very athletic. He's highly competitive. He's extremely confident. And he's already shown with some of the drills he's done in the past at camps against actual NFL defensive ends, he can handle the balance, the speed, the physicality, the handwork. He can handle a lot of things in pass blocking, which is a lot harder for young guys to learn in run blocking. So he would have a chance more than other guys, but absolutely Andre Green, because he fits a need. Mm-hmm. And then I would think Travis, because they're going to play him anyway. He's going to get out there and get some reps. And if he does well, he's going to be in that 15 to 25 range, I believe, at the minimum. That's probably where his range will be. He'll play. Andre will play regardless. Zach might be a wait and see. And Carolina fans, don't worry if it takes Zach a while to get in there, because they still don't know who's coming back. But they brought in Corey Gaynor for a reason. Kieran Johnson didn't start playing center until this last year. He could play guard. You're going to have Azudu back probably. You're going to have Richards back. There's going to be guys that are there. They don't need Zach to step in and throw him to the wolves either. That's the best thing about it for these 2 linemen. Mm-hmm. They don't have to throw them out there before they're ready. They've got enough in place. They can allow them to grow into that role.
Yeah, and that's big, because like you said, playing in the trenches as a true freshman, doesn't matter how good you are.
It's so hard. It's such a difference.
Yeah, it's size and speed, like you said. It's just, you got guys in there that are, in college football.
Zach is going from blocking guys like me when I was 17 to blocking men.
Just pancaking 150 guys.
And men that are physical. The physicality is something that will the physicality and the speed is going to take some time to adjust to you. I don't care how good you are. The greatest offensive lineman in the history of the sport, whoever he is, had to take time to adjust at whatever era it was.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let me ask y'all this real quick. I don't want to stay on this question too long, but I'm thinking just other freshmen that can maybe step in. What about, and Dina, feel free to answer, and AJ hit on it after, but what about, I'm looking at that running back position with, Ty Chandler leaving, DJ Jones. Did he really do enough this year to solidify a starting place? I know we'll see in the offseason. But what about guys like George Pettaway and Marion Hampton? Because those are 2 really talented guys at a running back position that I know you got some guys coming back, but it's still going to be pretty inexperienced. Dina, could you see maybe those 2 guys of what you've seen in their high school careers maybe step in and, I don't know about start, but play a lot?
It's a good situation to have. I believe I'll give the edge to Pettaway, because he's more the speed back, and that's kind of what Carolina will need. I mean, British, I consider British a power back. And then Caleb Hood, power.
That's a good point. Forgot about him.
See Kamaro Edmonds, he's a power back. But George is going to fit that speed option for North Carolina, because, we've mentioned several times, he's the kind of Michael Carter type kid that can speed, catch the ball out of the backfield. But I will give the edge to George. And plus, he's an early enrollee, and he's coming in, and he's going to have a 6-month head start on Omarion. Omarion's coming in June. So, but Omarion's got a great chance to play too. But I don't think they'll have to rush him maybe as much as they're going to have to with George, because George will give them some more options in their offense.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, AJ? You got any thoughts on?
Yeah, Petaway. I've said from Jacob, you and I were standing next to each other watching the first time we saw Rice, Petaway, Chapman, Grimes, all these kids more than a year and a half ago, and we both agreed that he looks like he reminded us of Michael Carter.
He really does. Yeah, he really does.
The way he walked, his mannerisms, just very, very almost not a spitting image, but pretty darn close to it. And let's not forget, Michael Carter's first college game as a true freshman, he scored 2 touchdowns against Cal. Yep. By the way, option pitches from Chaz Surratt. So future NFL linebacker Chaz Surratt. So I believe that Petaway will play some right away. I don't know what to expect from DJ Jones, and he's been banged up.
Yeah,
and as Mac has said, you got to stay healthy in order for them to rely on you and trust you. It's not his fault, but still got to stay healthy. So I don't think that they're going to go into next season saying, well, we could pencil in DJ Jones for anything because they don't know. I think British is a nice part. I can't imagine British is going to go from where he was to suddenly being the feature back, but you never know. He certainly looked really good against NC State. Throw out the Wofford game. That was Wofford. But he looked really good against a physical NC State team. And he was a punishing runner with some speed, but I agree with Dina, a little bit more Javante, a little bit more between the tackles stuff. So I think Petaway is someone that we'll probably see in the rotation next year. He'll get some touches early, and if it goes really well, he'll get more touches.
Definitely. All right, let's move on to the third question we've got so far. Quick shout out to you, Buzzard, for the first question. I meant to shout these guys out when they were doing it. And Matt 1976 with that last question there as well. I think we got another one on here from him coming up too. But AJ, next one is for kind of, I guess this one could kind of be directed towards both of you guys. And so both of you guys can hit on it. Dina, I'll ask you the question first, but the question goes, would Jaquarius Conley likely out for next year? I don't know if he means out for the whole season, but I would, with Conley recovering from a knee injury and whatnot, you might expect him to be a little bit slow getting back, maybe not be ready to go when the season starts. Do you see Carolina moving Ra Dilworth to safety since Gray and Eccles will be starting at linebacker? At least that's what he thinks. Eccles is going to slide into that linebacker spot at Gemmel. I know, Dino, I've seen Ra in person. I'm sure AJ has. I know you have. We've been together, seeing him in person a few times. He's got the speed. I could see him potentially playing back there, but do you think his game translate to that safety position, Dina? Because you would definitely know better than I would based on how much you've seen him and talked to him.
Well, back to Conley, I mean, with medical advances, I assume he will be ready, with that type of injury. But, like you said, it may take him some time to get back into the shape and everything. Yeah. But I don't know. If I was in Jay Bateman's head, I probably could give you a better answer. But certainly Ra has all the tools to be a safety. He is kind of undersized as a linebacker, and you cannot. I mean, his speed is just amazing. The reps that he did have, you could see it. I mean, him just sideline to sidelines. I mean, that's kind of what you want in a safety, and your safety is kind of like your last resort. If someone does break a tackle, he's got that speed that could be the last defense of guarding the end zone. But I would say it's a great possibility, but that secondary, I mean, that's Coach Bateman's baby back there, safety. So, I mean, you got a lot of there's a lot of kids in that room that they've really not, that, especially at nickel too. You got Cameron Roseman Sinclair back there. You have Boykins. Yeah, DeAndre Boykins. And Tamir Brown, he's a cornerback, but they might have to. And they got Holloway and Marcus Allen and Will Hardy coming in. I don't know how much they'll get, how much reps they'll get, but I would say that they could consider it. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
The thing about JQ is that they keep trying to play him somewhere else and he ends up at nickel. excuse me, he ends up at nickel because they've had issues at nickel and they've needed him there because he's physical. He could be that safety when the nickel calls on more of a safety type of skill. He could be that linebacker when it calls on that. I think they're going to be okay at safety because they have Biggers and Kelly. Mm-hmm. So I think they'll be okay with those guys. Cameron Resman-Sinclair is at a point in his career where he's going to, like what Biggers did a year ago, maybe he's going to step up. And if he's ever going to be a contributor, next year is a great opportunity for him to be the third safety back there. So I think that with them still being thin at linebacker because Asante transferred, they lose Gimmel. They were thin this year at linebacker. I think Ra stays there. It's going to be Cedric Gray and Power Eccles. When Jeremiah got the targeting call against Wake Forest, Power Eccles went in and played for him. So you're going to see Power and Cedric Gray, and I think Ra will stay there at linebacker. Ra's going to put on some more weight. I do think it's interesting, though, if you want to think about the prospect of Ra moving to either nickel or a safety position. Mac made a point last week of saying we got to get bigger at linebacker. That second line of defense against the run needs to be better. The 4th and 2 runs that they allowed 5 yards. It's not just the line of scrimmage that you have to make that stop. Those guys can play gaps. Linebackers got to fit those gaps. They got to make a hit and keep the ball carrier from advancing. So he wants to be bigger, wants to be stronger, wants to be stouter, if you will, at linebacker. And that's where the question about Ra comes in, because can he add more weight? Yes, but how much more weight can he add where it makes a lot of sense to him? Everyone has a ceiling with where they can add weight and they still have their edge. They still have their quickness and their speed and their agility. Where is that point with Ra? I would imagine that they know by now, and if they don't, they'll find out in the next 6 months, and that will determine probably where he ends up. Right now, I would expect him to stay at linebacker because I think as long as they're healthy back at safety, and Resman-Sinclair, who was a former 4-star kid, progresses in the way that Biggers did, I think they'll be okay with 3 of those guys. And nickel, to me, is going to be the bigger question because I don't know if Conley's going to be healthy. That was a bad injury.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
and it was in late November. So you got to figure surgery in December. They're going to be started. The freshmen that are enrolling early are going to be on campus when he's 1 month into his recovery.
Yeah.
So he's going to miss all the spring, he's going to miss the summer. And then you got to deal with the mental stuff about getting over it and getting back on the field. For some guys, it's not an issue. For some, it is. I think we've seen with Antoine Green, it could be a long issue.
Yeah.
So we don't know how JQ is going to handle it. They don't know. So they need to prepare moving forward if he's not going to be available. And if he is available and could go when Florida A&M comes to town, then that's an added bonus. And you could stick him at nickel, you could stick him at safety. He's proven he could play either spot pretty well.
Yeah, and recovery would be interesting to watch with him too because of the way he plays. He's such a fast, physical guy that flies around the field. When you got a knee injury like he picked up, the mental side of that's huge, being able to get back to being confident and comfortable playing like that because of the way he plays. And I think Ra at nickel is an interesting prospect. I mean, the way he flies around the field. I mean, I saw him with my own 2 eyes. I know Dana did too, run a 4.4. I mean, he's a very fast kid. And like you said, he's not the biggest kid in the world looking like a Power Eccles or looking like Cedric Gray.
He can tackle.
Yeah. He's a smart kid too.
Very smart.
He's a smart kid. Guys, he's a smart kid. Your nickel needs to be smart because there's so much responsibility there. They've got a lot on their plate at nickel, especially in Bateman's defense. So I think Ra can handle. I thought this year when they were having issues there,
might throw him in
maybe Ra throw him out there, see if he can. Maybe DeAndre Boykins takes a big step forward. I know that he played a couple of reps. They love him. He was the first guy in this class to commit. This freshman classman this year who committed, 2 years before he even signed. So I think. Or excuse me, that was not DeAndre. I'm thinking of Dontavius Nash because I got him confused.
I forgot about
Dontavius Nash. Was another
Nash
guy.
is a good guy to talk about too.
He's another guy. I got them all confused because they kind of look alike from afar. So, but nevertheless, Boykins is a guy who'll be there at nickel next year. But I really like the idea of Ra playing nickel because he could do some of his DB stuff and do some of his LB stuff in that one position. And he's smart enough and he's got moxie. You want your nickel to be a guy who steps on the field and thinks there ain't anybody out here can do anything to me. And
well, his confidence level
to the field
is through the roof, Jacob. the camps and combines we went to. I mean, he wanted to play some cornerback. I
played everywhere, yeah.
Cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, the kid's got a lot of talent, and he's, you don't get the name Rah without having some kind of moxie, and I could see him. I mean, it's just wait and see.
Yeah, wait and see how it plays out. Yeah, I think that nickel position will be one that Carolina, like you said, with Conley's injury and everything, they might have to try a couple of new guys there. And I think Rah, physically and just athletic wise, definitely could fit that bill. So, all right, guys, on to the next question. That was another good question right there. I think this one's also from Matt 1976. He hit us with a couple. So AJ, this is more so directed towards you. This is about the quarterback position, obviously, with Sam leaving after the bowl game. Do you think Mac will name a starter at QB after spring ball or after summer camp? So that's the first kind of part of that question. Do you think it comes after spring ball or after that, fall camp or during the fall camp?
Adjusting so I can give a good answer here.
And then just to add on to that, because this one kind of feeds onto it as well, it's kind of a two-part question. Do they want to know Mac's decision ASAP so that they have enough time to transfer before the season starts? Or do they want maximum amount of time to fight for that position? I guess that's kind of referring to the guys that will be fighting it out for that quarterback. I know the second part of that question is a little bit hard to answer because we don't necessarily – you'd have to ask one of those guys to really know what they would prefer or what the coaching staff would prefer. But from a coaching, as a group as a whole, do you think they want to name that quarterback after spring ball, during spring ball, or, after kind of that fall camp or during that fall camp period?
I'll address the second part first. Mac's obligation, number one, is to the program, not to the individual kids in the program and how it might affect their future. So that's a byproduct of what the decisions he makes for the program are. So you can't worry about that. I do think that they have enough conversations that's part of the conversation they have with them, but that never plays into the actual decision they make when it comes to doing what's right for the program. So that being said, I think they're going to if there's a clear leader in this competition between Drake and Jacoby. And by the way, I might as well throw Connor Harrell in there. He's already working out.
Yeah, why not?
He's a winner. Connor Harrell is an under the radar kind of guy. He's a winner, valedictorian. He's got all these really interesting qualities that a couple of years later, you look back and say, oh, no wonder. No wonder he's the starter. No wonder this guy's a superstar in college. Man, he was underrated in high school. We kept telling rivals to make him a 4-star, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff, right? So we don't really know. Everything that I've heard gives me the indication to believe that Drake May will be the quarterback next year. But he still has to win that battle. I think one of the values in both he and Criswell going through this year the way they did is they were kind of going back and forth. Drake has not played much at all in 2 years. So by the time next season rolls around, it'll be nearly 3 years since he's been out there, been the regular guy, taking snaps, running an offense. Did it against Wofford some? A little bit. I don't know how much it helps because it's not playing, South Mecklenburg. They're better than South Mecklenburg, teams like that. But it was still just Wofford. So I think the competition factor is good for both of them because they have to keep an edge. They're not on the field, but they have to maintain an edge because every rep they take in practice, they're kind of going against each other. Mm-hmm. That said, I think it's best for the program that they name a starter by the end of spring if they knew who it's going to be. I think they had a pretty good idea it was going to be Sam their first year, but they couldn't just name the golden boy who flipped the quarterback because you start beating out guys that were already there because you don't want to run the risk of the other established returning players from the Fedora regime thinking, hey, wait a second, which other young guy's going to beat me out? They're going to announce that in August. I better start thinking about my options here. And so I think that they held off on naming Sam because of that and other reasons. I think they also wanted to see him compete in August and just see what they can try to find another level of his competitive spirit and practice. Fall camp can do that. In this case, whoever the quarterback is, it needs to be their team going into OTAs in the summer and player-led practices. If it's Drake needs to be the guy that organizes when they show up at the football center and start practicing. Drake's the guy that needs to organize this. Drake's the guy that needs to organize that. He needs to assume the role long before August shows up. He needs to be that guy. So I think that they would like to name a starter by the end of spring. And I think that whoever's going to be the eventual starter needs to be that guy by the end of spring. So when August comes around, hey, man, I've been a starter for 4 months already. I have the command of this team. The guys all look up to me and they see me as a starter. This is my club moving forward. So that on-field transition happens a little bit smoother and a little bit quicker.
Definitely.
So that's what I think will probably happen. And if it is something like Drake, maybe Criswell does leave. I have no idea. We said earlier, we don't know what kids are thinking these days. Some kids just want to stick around at that school. They love it so much, love the education, got a girlfriend, whatever it is, they stay. Some guys leave at the drop of a hat. So we don't really know. I don't really want to project there. But I do think the program needs to name it starter by the end of spring so that guy can be the man for a few months before they get rolling in fall camp.
Dina, I want to ask you just as an add on to this, talk to us a little bit about Drake May. And if you want to add Connor Harrell in there, because obviously you covered his recruitment. I know he's a little bit further away. I know you've seen Drake a lot more in person and talked to him a lot more in person. But what, from Drake, and if you want to hit on Connor a little bit, just tell us a little bit about those guys and kind of what they bring at that quarterback position.
I told Andrew, because I was at a 7-on-7, and I know Andrew can. My
Be careful what you say, Miss King.
I was going to be dramatic in my voice. Andrew Drake, he makes me think of Sunshine on Titans because he's the.
I think I've heard you talk about this before too.
Yeah, All-American type kid when he's at Myers Park. Fantastic athlete,
Sunshine.
and some people might not even. I don't know if they'll agree with me, but sometimes I think Drake is the best athlete in that whole family. And you look at that family, from mom and dad to his brothers. Drake's got. I believe Drake has the potential to be better than all of them. And there's nobody around that's been higher on the potential Drake May than me. I mean, I've been really fascinated with his growth as a quarterback. I mean, a lot of people, question if he could be a mobile quarterback, and he is. I mean, I've thrown out a really big comparison in the Wofford game. I said, seeing Drake run the ball gave me some glimpses of watching like a young Trevor Lawrence run and the strides that he makes and everything. Definitely not comparing Drake to Trevor Lawrence, not right now or what, but I just think the upside is more with Drake. He's the home state guy. Most fans will relate. The May families are winners. They pull for the home state guys. I mean, this dude was committed to Alabama and Coach Saban, and decided to come back home. And I just think his demeanor. He's well spoken. We finally got to have him on the Zoom, the interview, and a lot of people saw the Drake May that I saw when I covered him in high school. Very polite, and gives straight, honest answers and everything. So I just think the upside with Drake is tremendous. And with Connor, I mean, Coach Longo said it. I asked him the question Monday. I mean, and I think Coach Longo sees a really, really superstar in Connor. I mean, you can't. He's a winner. He's lost one game. And technically, the one game he got hurt in against Powerhouse Hoover in the regular season. And early in the game, and they lost. But they came back when he was healthy and beat them in the Alabama State playoffs convincingly. Throws for about 70% completion rate. He had 40 or so touchdowns. Was really on a really good high school football team. At one point, they were really high nationally ranked, but great program, a smart kid. When Showtime camp came that kid and his family drove through the night from Alabama to Chapel Hill. And, we stood around and thinking that
I thought he might pop.
we thought he was going to commit that night. And we stayed there until we finally gave up, said, probably not going to happen. And then they went on up to Michigan. And he went to Michigan for that
because
right after
he was
Chapel
told to
Hill.
take that visit. He was told, take that visit, make sure this is where you want to go.
And then I believe he came back to Carolina again, and he committed on July 4th. So he is a smart kid. Got to watch him there, and he was really impressive at Showtime. And, Longo, he zeroed in on him. I know there were maybe a few more targets before. I mean, Coach Longo identified Cade Klubnik, who's turned out to be a 5-star and a top. I think he was in the top 10 now.
Yeah, I think he
is.
Going
to Clemson, but there for a while, Carolina was in the running for him, and then he blew up down there in Texas, and Clemson and all those other schools got involved. But Coach Longo's got a good eye for quarterbacks and everything.
Yes,
so the quarterback room is in pretty good shape, and I won't forget about Jefferson Boaz. I mean, that dude's 6'7". Can't forget about him. I mean, the career that he had at East Surrey and everything, and some of the conversations that we've had, because we didn't know Sam was going to play for a while in the Duke's Mayonnaise Bowl. So me and Andrew, we were talking about a lot of scenarios. We're like, well, what if somebody opts out at the quarterback room? Then you have like one quarterback and then Jefferson Boaz, So a lot of options, and I think you guys saw it this year that with them running Sam so much that they felt kind of confident in that room if they had to put one of those guys in, maybe not have the total package that Sam has, but it felt good with what those guys could do. So
Jacob, let me add something real fast. We finally got, because Connor signed last week, we finally got Phil Longo on record speaking about Connor on Monday. And boy, Dana, tell me if you agree with this. It sounded like he was talking about another Sam. The stuff he said hit on a lot of those points that he hit on about Sam back in the early days. And I think Connor Harrell, whether it's at North Carolina or somewhere else, and we say that now because quarterbacks leave at the drop of a hat, right? That's twice I've said drop of a hat. So find me for saying drop of a hat twice in the same podcast. But they leave very quickly a lot of times. I think he's going to be a really good player wherever he is, perhaps at North Carolina. I agree with Dean. I think Drake May's going to be the quarterback here. I think Drake, when you just look at him, he just radiates something different than a lot of other guys do. Sam radiated a lot of that same stuff too. We saw him in those early practices in fall camp his freshman year. In the spring, it was a little harder to differentiate. I was thinking, boy, maybe Reuter gets the nod for a while and we'll see what happens with Sam. But in the fall, man, that was Sam's team. Okay. And I think that ultimately it's going to be Drake's team. And with respect to Criswell, let's not ignore him here. Really good talent, really good player. And if it doesn't work out at North Carolina with him, I think there are a lot of places he could go and play around. My brother's an Indiana graduate, and he wants Criswell. He says, look, it was Drake May. I want Criswell to transfer to Indiana because we want him. And by the way, they've got Emory Simmons and Josh Henderson at IU. Well, so there's a little bit of recruiting connection. Yeah. I'm just throwing that out there for fun. I'm not doing rumor stuff here, guys. I'm just doing what my brother's talking about. And we have no idea right now. The quarterbacks are who they are. And I think that whoever ends up with the job, Carolina's going to be in good shape.
Yeah, definitely.
That room is a strength.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time strength. Last question to wrap this podcast up. AJ, this one's for you. There's no way around this one. So I'll let you hit on this one, AJ. And here's how it starts out. Based on your experiences playing high school football, so going way back right here, AJ.
Way back.
And by the way, it's from Hook UNC 75. one of our subscribers on TarHillIllustrated.com. So thank him for putting this one in. What do you think it will take for the offensive line to step up next year and perform to the level necessary for the offense to produce on the same level it did in 2020, plus cut down on the number of sacks it allowed in 2021? So good question. Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. Well, my initial response to that is, how does he know I played high school football?
You've talked about it every once in a while.
I guess I mentioned it. Well, because I do think that Chuck Amato once told me that one of the things he appreciated about the way I asked questions was because I was one of the few people in the media that understood what it's like to be in the trenches at the line of scrimmage. And I played a high level in Virginia. So I played against a lot of college dudes. I had them on my team and played against them, but it's not college. Different animal when you get to college, especially today, because offensive line work is much more hands oriented now than it was when I played. Mm-hmm. When I played, it was all about death marks on the helmet and hit him with this pad or hit him with that pad and drive him out, that kind of stuff. That's still part of it, a big part of it, but certainly a little bit different. Now, to answer his question, the offense was still in the top 10 this year. The ground game was in the top 10 as well, nationally, or top 12 or whatever it was. I haven't looked at the stat rankings in a while, and they've been skewed with some bowl games having already been played. The offense produced enough this year to win. I think if they had an average defense, they would have been 10-2. Mm-hmm. They would have lost to Virginia Tech, and the way Georgia Tech went, they would have probably lost that game. Maybe 9-3. Maybe they go win in Notre Dame. Maybe they win some of these other games. The defense was the issue ultimately. They had problems on offense, running in short yard situations in the red zone. Talked with Phil Longo about that on Monday. I asked him about that. The pass protection was an enormous problem and kept the offense from humming even more. So how do you fix that? Well, I think their conventional run blocking got better enough this year that I don't think that that's a big question. British Brooks ran really well against NC State. I don't think that was just because British Brooks suddenly exploded. Some of those holes he ran through, I could have waddled through and gotten a yard or two, okay? Mm-hmm. So that's the offensive line paving the way. We've talked about this before in a podcast, but there's a big difference between run blocking and pass blocking. They are different animals. Mm-hmm. And it requires a special athlete. One of the reasons Zach Rice has a chance to play early is because he's such a good athlete. He's big and strong and powerful. He can run block, but he's a good enough athlete that he's quick. He's got great feet. He's got excellent balance. Jacob, you and I were watching him in those drills. And what did I tell you right away? Man, that kid's athletic. He's got great balance. Balance means you can maintain it's not as physical. You have to add a lot more than just physicality to pass blocking. Really good use of hands, smart kid, good technique, all that kind of stuff. The great offensive lines that you see around the country, if you look at Bama's offensive line, Ohio State's, and whoever else, you're going to see a lot of 4- and 5-star kids on there because they're also athletes. The really big 6'6", 310-pounder in high school, that's a 3-star. He's a 3-star because he's not a great athlete. And if you're not a great athlete, you have less of a chance of being good at pass protection. So they're adding some of those guys to the program. They've got Zimmerman. They've got some of these other guys that they brought in. They're looking to bring in more. You got Zach Rice. So I think the offensive line, the more athletic it gets. Diego Pounds, even though he's a 3, he was a high school basketball player.
Yeah, big time athlete.
Looking at an offensive lineman that played other sports, you could teach a kid that's got pretty good footwork, that's not tripping over himself. You could teach him to become a very good pass blocker. Mm-hmm. For run blocking, less skilled. Pass blocking, more skilled. So I think that's a big part of it. People want to dog Stacey Searles a lot, but man, look at the dude's track record.
That's a good point.
A lot of guys in the NFL. He was LSU's offensive line coach when they won a national title. I believe that was under Les Miles. There's a lot of guys in the sport that swear by Stacey Searles as a teacher, but no disrespect to the kids that were there. But when you've got a 2-star and a bunch of 3-stars who aren't great athletes, but they look like they fit the suit 100%, and they do as run blockers, it's a little bit more challenging to teach a guy who doesn't have great balance, doesn't have great footwork, doesn't have great hands to be a great pass blocker. So when they improve the athlete up front, they're going to get better at pass protection. That said, no excuse for allowing 45 sacks.
Yeah.
No excuse to get blown up the way they got blown up. And I do think some of these sacks were on Sam. You go look at PFF, and I trust a lot of what PFF says. Plus, Phil and Sam have said it themselves. He was held on to it too long. Sometimes he left the pocket too quickly and ran into sacks, that kind of thing. There were a lot of the fact that receivers weren't getting open, so the linemen had to sustain longer. There were a lot of factors at play other than just, McKeithen and Tucker and Richards not being great at pass protection. There were a lot of other, and up the middle. They were really poor pass protection up the middle this year. So there were a lot of other factors at play. That's Definitely. A very long answer to the question, but I think as we see the better athlete come in to comprise the offensive line, I think you'll see the pass protection improve.
Definitely. Good stuff, guys. That's a good place to wrap this one up. I know you guys got to hop on a press conference here in a few minutes as well, so I'll let you guys run. And
Jay Bateman.
Yeah, I know, right? I'll let you guys run and get to it. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. She's been Deanie King. We'll have another podcast like this coming as well for on the basketball side too. So if you guys enjoy these kind of podcasts, we can continue to do them. And it's always good to hear from our subscribers and whatnot and get some Q&A sessions in here. So if you want to be part of that Q&A session too, make sure you sign up for TarHillIllustrated.com. You can find the link in the description below to head on over there and check us out. But as always, guys, thanks for watching. Like this video if you enjoy it. Share it as well. Hit that notification bell too so you know every single time we upload. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.